Hey there, this is John with the Breakthrough Creative, the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. My guest today is Mark Enright of Mortar Heads. Really interesting name for his company, and he's going to get into that in a little bit and explain how he goes about his business and really gets into his journey. And he has a background in special effects makeup. That was a love of his, but it started out from being in a band and playing bass guitar. So his story is fascinating because it's a winding path that leads to some really, really cool projects and cool jobs, and has led him to where he is today. Um, he, he makes these awesome pop culture masks. He is a Star Wars guy. I would say he is an 80s action figure guy, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing Mark's story. So here we go.
Okay, my name is Mark Enright. I live in California. I'm originally from Indiana. I moved here in '92 to play music, but now I make masks. I make goofy novelty fake vomit with eyeballs in it and melted snowmen and stuff like that. Just kind of funny little smart alecky kind of novelties that I can, you know, sell to people through Etsy and stuff. Um, about 4 years ago, I started making masks of action figures. I started off with the Walrus Man, the Kenner Walrus Man, because that was always my favorite figure as a child. And so I made a mask of that. That was like my second or third like full head mask that I'd made. And somebody saw it and they're like, "Oh, can you make me a blue snaggletooth?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So charged him $100. I made the mold and just sculpted and made the mold and everything. And then the blue snaggletooth just kind of blew up. Like people saw it, and then I think for a couple of weeks it was just every day one was selling on my Etsy store. It was just like constantly kind of blew up. And then from there, everyone was like, "Oh, you're gonna do a hammerhead?" And I was like, "Well, I don't think I'm gonna do a hammerhead because that's gonna be a crazy mold. I mean, the seam is right down the middle of the figure because the weird head. I can't do that." And then I guess in the back of my mind, as soon as I said that, something was like, "Oh, you're gonna try that." So a couple months later, I was like, "Well, why not? I'll just mold it just like the action figure." So I made the hammerhead, and then of course after that I made Greedo. So then I had all four Kenner Cantina action figure masks, and that just kind of people got into those. A lot of people shared them that were into like vintage toys and stuff, and really like pushed me. And there was a bunch of artists like people like Killer Bootlegs, Tim Barron, Randy Falk from NECA. Like a lot of people, like some people were buying stuff from me, and also some people were just like, "Oh wow, I really I love what you're doing. I really love these things. They give you a lot of support." So that was cool. So there was a lot of people that I had already looked up to, and enjoyed their work and stuff like that. So once that kind of happened, and then so after I did the Kenner, did the Kenner masks, and I was like, okay, well, I want to kind of continue on the action figure route mask wise. So I was looking at my Remco mini monster action figures from like 1980. I think they came out, and I was looking at the Creature from the Black Lagoon and the Wolfman. I was like, well, because I didn't really want to just do Creature from the Black Lagoon mask, because everybody's done one, and there's so many out there, and so many of them are just like amazing. I mean, even like Trigger Treat Studios did one, I think last year, and it's just amazing. I mean, it looks great. So it's like, well, why do I just want to do another one of those? So I was looking at those, and I was like, well, they kind of look weird. I never really just stood there and like looked at them, even though I've had them for years. I was like, they're kind of goofy looking. they kind of have a real, like, you can tell who the character is, but they're very like toyetic. They have a very, kind of generic vibe to them. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do a Wolfman, because I want to do a Wolfman. I'm going to try to do the Wolfman sculpture. So I did the Wolfman, and then people were like, follow me as I did that. And then after the Wolfman, I did Creature from the Black Lagoon. And people were like, oh, you're going to do the whole set? I was like, yeah, we're going to do the whole set. I think the Kenner ones, it took me like 3 years or something like that to do the whole set. It took a while. But for the Remco, I did the Wolfman. I did the Creature from the Black Lagoon. And then around this time, Randy Falk from NECA, who's, I don't know if you know who he is, but he pretty much runs, all the art direction, and he does all the licensing and that kind of stuff for NECA. And he contacted me, and he bought all my Star Wars masks, all my Remco masks. And he was like, you know what, we're doing a deal with Universal. Would you like to, do the set through us? You sculpt them, and then we'll release them, And I was like, yeah, of course. Because, as a kid watching, 3D, Revenge of the Creature at home, years and years ago, never thought that one day I'd be able to sculpt, a mask of one of these characters, and then people would actually put it out there and sell it, to the world. So I was like, but yeah, of course.
That's awesome. By the way, was that 3D Revenge of the Creature on Svengoolie?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember going to 7-Eleven? Wasn't it 7-Eleven to get the 3D glasses?
I went to 7-Eleven, got the 3D glasses, but it was like we didn't have a color TV. I think you had to have a color TV.
Yeah.
At home, I didn't have a color TV. I think we only had a black and white TV. My grandparents had a color TV, but the color was broken. So it only was black and white. It was like the color didn't work. And I was like, well, we got to watch it here because, it does have to be a color TV. And they're like, well, the color doesn't work. And I said, I don't think it matters. As long as it's a color TV, I think it might work. So yeah, I had the glasses. I don't think it worked. I don't really remember. It was more about, the whole thing, getting the glasses.
Sure.
The funny, skits he did in between, take off your glasses now and that kind of stuff. I mean, that was, worth it just to do that stuff. So
that's awesome. Well, let me do this. Let me take you back a little bit, because I love everything you shared. I love the toy-esque nature of your work. It's but so big. I love that. How did you get like from there to here? Meaning, how did your love for art start, and how did you like grow up in Indiana around it, and how did you get out to LA?
Okay. Well, I was always, as a kid, I was always drawing, coloring, and my family was pretty supportive of that. They all, people would buy me art kits for Christmas. I had finger paints, I had, drawing boards and light boards, and, whatever. Every year I would get like some cool art stuff, to help me kind of push me to keep doing that. And then, school, I was always drawing. As a kid, I would take a coloring book with me everywhere. I'd always be coloring, drawing. They were like, oh yeah, Mark, he's just sitting over there in the corner, not making a sound, drawing or coloring, whatever. So, that was pretty much my whole thing as a kid. Even in school, when careers would come up, people were like, yeah, we know you're going to be an artist, whatever. They just got sick of hearing me say, I was going to be an artist and stuff like that. So, and even had, it was me and a buddy, we kind of started like a drawing club in school. I think this was like 4th grade or something like that. And the teacher at the time, she suggested to my mom that there was some kind of art classes going on through the summer, and she should send me there. So I went there, and they taught you how to do like, make fake leather on plastic with shoe polish and masking tape, and like, color sugar with chalk and put it in a jar and melt, candle wax on top and make a decorative, thing, whatever. It was just kind of, but they had like portrait drawing, stuff like that. So I did that. So people were always pushing me, into art. I would join little art contests and things like that. But and then when I got in my teens, I kind of got into like BMX, skateboarding. Through skateboarding, I really got into like punk rock. So punk rock kind of introduced me to music. So I started, I played drums in like marching band in high school. I played guitar, and then at some point, I figured, well, I'm not going to be a great guitarist, so I switched to bass guitars. I was like, well, there's no bass players. I'm going to become a bass player. I mean, there's plenty of great people to look up to. There's Paul McCartney, John Entwistle, all kinds of, bass players are cool. So I'll be a bass player. And I found a band. I joined a band. There was guys much older than me, not much older, but they were older, more established musicians and stuff. So, and then the drummer from that band, me and him, that band, once it kind of dissolved, we continued on. We had another band. We played in Chicago, played in Indiana, all over the place. And that band kind of started falling apart. So me and the drummer moved to Los Angeles in '92. He had kind of a gig set up already. I didn't. So I was just, I was like, all right, I was working at Subway in Indiana. I wasn't going to college or anything. So I was working at Subway. I was living in my mom's basement because at that point I had moved back home because, I don't know, I lived with the singer from my band, but, he moved back with his parents. And I was like, well, it's no fun living here by myself, away from my family and everything. So I moved back home, lived in my mom's basement. And then we decided, okay, we're going to move to Los Angeles, And this is kind of like on the cusp of the whole grunge movement about to happen and everything. And I was basically, I wasn't Bon Jovi, but I was pretty much, into like hard rock and, kind of pop rock, like Enough's Enough. And I was into Cheap Trick and that kind of stuff. So, I was not a grunge person at all, really. I was, even though I listened to that music and I enjoyed all kinds of music from Temptations to Motley Crue, whatever. But, so I had a kind of diverse influences as far as music goes. So I moved to Los Angeles. I finally got a band out there. That band was Cartoon Boyfriend. And we eventually got our manager. We got a manager who was Kenny Kerner, who had produced Kiss, like the first two Kiss albums. And he pretty much, we were together for almost 10 years. We put an album out independently. We toured a little bit. We did like a college tour. We went up to Utah. We had to go to this college kind of battle of the bands. We went up in the mountains in the snow to do this college battle of the bands. In the winter, you got to play all the colleges, like in Southern California. So we won that, and we just got to go and play all these colleges. So we would just show up, the middle of the day on a college campus, set up in the quad, whatever. And there's this weird little band, playing this crazy music. It was kind of crazy. But so we did that. And eventually that band, we put an album out. This was, I think we were together like 6 to 8 years, something like that. And it finally, the lead singer left. So we continued on as a 3-piece. And we did that for a little while. And it was just like, what? It's kind of, it just kind of dissolved. No one said, that's it, I quit. It just kind of dissolved. I moved out of the band house, me and my girlfriend who lived there with me. We moved out of the band house. We got an apartment. And then, so after that, I just started playing piano, writing songs on my own, and then drawing. When my girlfriend figured out that I could draw really good, she started buying me all kinds of art stuff. Like, oh, here's some sketchbooks, and I got you some charcoal, and here's all these drawing pencils. I was like, oh, okay, cool, thank you. So then I just kind of started doing more and more art. And eventually that turned into customizing with like action figures, making accessories for action figures, that kind of thing.
So that's a bit of a jump from drawing to making accessories. So tell me, how did you know to do that?
they were kind of, I mean, they weren't great accessories. I wasn't like doing, resin castings or anything like that. I would like buy little wood dowels and like whittle a replacement lightsaber for 12-inch, Star Wars characters, stuff like that. I didn't really have any knowledge of making, silicone molds or, casting resin or urethanes or anything like that. That was like, because this is, I think, probably pre-YouTube. I don't think there was even videos out there for sure to even do this at that time.
So I'd say, what are you at, like 2003 at this point?
This is probably, yeah, it's probably 2000, early 2000s.
Okay.
So, so I was doing that. And then I was just kind of, I would make like little foam backpacks to stick on a 3 3/4-inch stormtrooper to make him a sand trooper, and just little kind of cheap stuff like that I could sell on eBay for like $4 or whatever. And during this time, I was also working. Well, before I started making action figures, let me go back just a little bit. I had worked in customer service the whole time I was in the band. I worked for a company called Pink Dot, and they delivered groceries, alcohol, cigarettes up to all the like rock stars up in the Hollywood Hills. They were on Sunset Boulevard. So I worked there. I worked in the deli at first, and I got that job because I had a letter of recommendation from Subway. So they were like, oh, you worked at Subway. They didn't care I had long hair. They didn't care what I looked like or anything, as long as I could make sandwiches and I was semi-dependable. They were like, or dependable. I wasn't like the typical, Californian person just rolling in and, or like probably a lot of probably other people my age are kind of like still partying and just like, calling out of work. I think they just kind of saw me as somebody, I was kind of level-headed, even though I had these big dreams of being, a rock star or famous musician or songwriter, things like that. They kind of said, okay, we'll give this guy a shot. And they gave me a job in the deli. I worked there for a while. Eventually I moved up into customer service, taking the orders over the phone. And so I did that. And eventually this company, they expanded and they got a whole call center, and I worked there. And eventually, I didn't try to move up, but I guess because just of my natural ability to do these things, or I was just more inclined to actually work than most people, I just kind of moved up without actually asking to be moved up. They would just say, oh, you're taking the most calls. How do you do it? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm sleeping in between calls because I'm playing in a band at night. So I don't know why I can take the most calls while all these other people are not. I have no idea. I guess I'm just good at it. And so I did that. And then eventually, I became a manager of this call center, one of the managers. And so it was a lot of customer service, because it was like they sold food, they sold alcohol, they sold cigarettes, they rented movies. They had laundry service, they had all this stuff going on. So it was like, there was always problems. You're always dealing with people, problems, people not paying their late fees or whatever, it was all kinds of stuff. But it was a good job, because I did that, and you got to talk to people. It wasn't face to face. So it was really easy for me, because usually while I was on the phone, I would just be doodling, drawing pictures and stuff. And people would say, oh, you're so calm, I'm like, yeah, it's just my demeanor, I guess, but I would just be, while I'm taking their orders or whatever, I would just be doodling, drawing, spaceships and whatever, So I did that. And then kind of going back to the band thing a little bit, the band, we were going to go on tour. Pink Dot said, well, we can't let you go, we can't let you have the time off. But the company was being sold and things weren't going well with them anyway. So I was like, well, I'm just going to quit then. And I'll go on tour, and when I get back, I'll find a job. And so I did that. I quit. And then we went on tour. It was, very anticlimactic. Nothing really happened, It was just a regular tour, And then when I got back, I had to find a job. So I went to Michael's. And I got a job part-time at Michael's and part-time at Barnes & Noble in the music department. because I knew music. So they had a music and movie department at my local Barnes and Noble. So I was working part-time both places. And I think also being at Michael's around all this, the paint, the canvases, the Mod Podge, the glues, and everything, it just kind of really reawakened stuff in me too. That it was like, oh yeah, I want to try to do, I want to try to make stuff. I always kind of built model kits as a kid. I built model kits all the time, but Michael's had a big model section, so I'd always buy models, take them home and build them, and give them to friends, whatever. So that was kind of that. And being at Barnes and Noble, being around all the kind of books, it was like a whole art section. So I could just go and they would let you check out any book you wanted that you could read, take it home, read. So I read like every biography from every musician I ever was into, or, artist, everything. It was just, everything was at your fingertips kind of, as far as wanting to learn about stuff. So, after all that, that's kind of what inspired me to start making stuff. And then when, eventually I quit Michael's and I just worked at Barnes and Noble full time. And kind of the same thing happens at Barnes and Nobles that happened at Pink Dot. I kind of got moved up because there were, I became a head cashier, then I became a manager and then assistant manager. And then but it wasn't, really what I wanted to do. And so then when we were going to have my first child, I have 2 daughters now, we kind of figured out, we did the math, and we're like, well, for her to go to childcare, it's going to cost pretty much my entire salary, that I'm making at Barnes and Noble. So, why don't you just stay home? You take care of the kids. You can work on art and stuff while, you're watching the kid. So they, okay. So, I stepped down from assistant manager job, and I stayed there part-time, Barnes and Noble. I stayed part-time, and I would just go work at night for like 4 hours, a couple times a week. And then I just watched my daughter all day, and then started making little, accessories, and, that from the accessories, I kind of started making garbage cans. I would get a garbage can, paint it like an astromech droid, and then make the legs out of mortar, because I had some brick mortar from when we fixed like the fireplace one time or something. So I was like, I was looking for just random materials that I could kind of use. And I was like, oh, well, I have mortar. It's kind of like cement. I'll try that. So I sculpted the legs out of mortar for this, garbage can droid. And I sold it on eBay for like $60. And I was like, wow, that was pretty easy to do. So I started doing that. But the robot thing has kind of died off. But then I was like, well, if I should take the mortar and just make a sculpture out of that. But mortar, if you've never worked with it before, is pretty much like a cake mix or like mud. It's, you can't just make a sculpture out of it. So I was like, well, I'll do like a bas relief style. I'll just put it in a pile and I'll sculpt a face or bust. So I just, said I can do a Chewbacca. So I got the image from the Chewbacca Star Wars card, the 12-back card or whatever it was. And then I was like, I'm going to do a Chewbacca. So I sculpted it, in mortar. It looked okay. He was kind of Bigfootish. But so I did that and I was like, oh yeah, it looks pretty good. So, and I kind of continued on that. I did a C-3PO, and then I did a Darth Vader. And I would get little sales here and there from people that saw these. And then I was also in a Star Wars collectors club, which I'm still in actually. And so we would have meetups every once in a while, like every couple months. And so I would just kind of start making them for different collectors. Like, oh, can you make me a Boba Fett? Or, make me an Ewok, or make me an R2-D2. So I kind of started doing that and just selling them directly to collectors. And I was selling them for like $20. I mean, but mortar, I could buy 20 pounds of mortar for like $6 or something like that. So it was, and at the time when I first started making them, you had to do it really quick because mortar sets up in like 15 minutes. So if you didn't finish it in 15 minutes, you never would finish it. That was it. So I had to sculpt it really fast, but then later on I figured out you could add a retardant to it and that would give you like 4 hours. So, but it had to be cool. You couldn't like do it in the summertime when it was all hot and everything. So, I was doing it like after midnight, for like 4 hours, trying to sculpt these things in mortar. And after a while, it's like, okay, this is a kind of cool novelty idea, but the novelty of it kind of wore off. I was like, I need something that's more that I can work on all the time. Not that has to be nighttime. I'm out here all night. I want to do something where I can work on it wherever, whenever I want. So eventually I switched from mortar to water clay. And then at the same time, I was, I was raising my daughter. Then we had another daughter. Like 2.5 years later, we had another daughter. So then I had 2 kids to take care of, but I was still making stuff and trying to figure out, okay, when the kids get older, well, what am I going to do? Maybe I don't want to work at Barnes and Noble for the rest of my life. So I was like, well, my dad was a welder. He worked for Inland Steel for like 30 years or something like that. So, and I was like, well, maybe I'll do welding. So I went to school for welding and I did that for a couple semesters. And during that time, my father, he got diagnosed with gallbladder cancer. Mm. So then we were going back and forth from Indiana to here, and then he kind of passed away maybe like 1.5 years after he was diagnosed. So, and after that, I was like, well, I don't want to do welding anymore. It was like, I couldn't, it was just like too much, even while he was sick and I was like in welding class, I was like, I just couldn't deal with it. I don't know. And I think in the back of my mind also, there was something saying, this is cool. And I've never done anything like this, like welding. I'm glad I did it because it, you have a giant torch and you're melting metal. It's still fun. It's still a cool thing to do. But I was just like, this really isn't, it's way too industrial. I know a lot of people use it as art and they make things welding, but I couldn't really see my path, art wise with welding. It was just seemed like I was just exchanging my, books for a welding torch, So I kind of got out of welding and then I was trying to think, what am I going to do next? And then once my dad passed away and then we dealt with his estate and everything. And then I got to live off his Social Security for like 5 years. So my wife was like, well, you're getting money every month. So why don't you just quit your crappy job, focus on, doing art or doing something, you really want to do. So I did that. And then I was like, well, okay, well, what am I going to do?
But if I could just interject real quick, it's really cool that you have that relationship with your wife. I mean, she sounds really supportive. I haven't heard once she's like, you got to figure out what you're going to do and go make money. It's.
I haven't got to that part yet.
But regardless, I mean, the truth is we need to earn if it's needed, right? But it sounds like you guys have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she was very supportive in that way. And then, so I was just kind of had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, and through sculpting, I was still sculpting, and around that time I'd switched from mortar into wet clay, water clay. So, and then I started getting books on like, movie monsters, that kind of thing. And then the show Making Monsters, which is the Distortions Unlimited, was on. And that came on, I think, when I was still in welding school. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, they're making monsters and masks, and they have a guy who's a welder. They have like, they're doing all kinds of stuff that I kind of want to do. So excuse me. So that kind of really inspired me too. I was like, okay, well, maybe there is something in that direction I could do. So, and then Jordu Shell, who was on Making Monsters a lot, he is in Los Angeles, and he would teach classes. And I think he did make a silicone head class. And then, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to this class and, check it out. And then, I did that a little bit later, I was still kind of figuring out exactly what I'm going to do art-wise. What's my niche? What's my thing that's going to set me apart from, the people who are, super amazing and really great at what they do. And I'm just kind of this guy that has a lot of ideas, but I haven't really, come through with anything yet. So I was still trying to figure stuff out. And then, so I'm sculpting in wood. I switched from mortar to clay. And then, I was working part-time. I was still getting money from my dad's Social Security. So I didn't, financially, and my wife has a good job. She's a customer service manager and operations manager for a credit union. And she's been in banking for like her whole life pretty much. So she has always had a good, solid foundation. So, it wasn't like we had to depend on me selling mortar sculptures at $20 a pop to, support the family. So, we didn't have to worry about it that way. But, at the same time, when I was going to conventions and things like that, she would say, oh, take a business card with you, talk to people, try to get in somewhere, find a job, whatever, even if it's just, there's all these shops and stuff. So for companies, see if you can get hired by one of them. And so, begrudgingly, because I'm not a very outgoing person, I would, kind of do that. And then, but nothing really ever came to it. I would, talk to a few people and say, oh yeah, I saw your video on Stan Winston school, and they're like, oh yeah, thanks. And, oh, well, if I know anybody looking for anybody or needs interns or whatever, I'll let you know. And I would give them my card, nothing really ever came of it, but it was, I was kind of just trying to get in there somewhere, So at the same time, we had moved to La Crescenta from Glendale, and I found out that one of the people in my daughter's class, one of the fathers of one of my daughter's classmates, did a haunted house, and they've been doing this giant haunted house for like 16 years, something like that. And so, and I didn't really know them, but I kind of heard somebody talking about this, and I was like, oh, really? Wow. That's, because that was kind of going into that Distortions Unlimited Making Monsters, direction. I was like, oh, working in a haunted house, I can make masks, I can do makeups, I could build stuff. That's, that sounds cool. I want to do that. And so I don't know if I reached out to them or if this guy, because he's very outgoing, he would send emails to like the whole class. Oh, this is so-and-so, we're doing a haunted house. If anybody wants to come and be like, a zombie in the haunted house or whatever, come by at this time and we'll give you masks and costumes and all this stuff. And so I think the first year, and my daughter was like in kindergarten, I think, or first grade, maybe, no, kindergarten. And so the first year I was like, okay, I'll go. And then I went on Halloween. They only did it one day a year. And I dressed up like a zombie, put on a mask and climbed around in the graveyard and did all that. And then, so the next year, he sent the same email out, and I was like, well, I want to help you guys make the stuff. Can I help make stuff? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so, and then he couldn't get rid of me. I was there like, knocking on their door at like, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Are you guys making stuff yet? I was there. So we did that. And then that was like opened up a whole new world for me too, because at the same time, I was like, well, maybe, I'll get back into doing makeup. Because when I was a kid, I was mostly into drawing and stuff, but I was always into, monster movies like Svengoolie. I watched Svengoolie all the time. But also through cable TV, I watched The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. What's the Altered States? Altered States was like one of my favorites as a kid, and Dick Smith, at the time I didn't know who Dick Smith was, but that was the Dick Smith thing. He did all those crazy, makeups where they're all like in those blob suits and everything. And so, I had that whole kind of backlog of influence from those movies and stuff. So I was like, well, maybe I'll get into like, makeups, because I was always reading Fangoria, stuff like that as a kid too. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. Maybe I'll go into that. So, and I was reading some older kind of monster book. And I remember reading something about, makeup labs, makeup laboratories, or some company that somebody had been running. And I was like, wow, I wonder if this company's still in business. And so I look it up, and I don't think they were, but then I discovered makeup effects laboratories, it's makeup and effects laboratories in North Hollywood. And they had this whole kind of website, fill this out and you could be an intern, and they were like, we have a metal shop and we have professional, makeup artists working here and things like that, learn the business, whatever. So I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. So I filled it all out. And of course, the website didn't work. It was like I was submitting it 50 times. It never went through. I was like, oh my God. So finally, I went to Monsterpalooza or Son of Monsterpalooza, one of the ones. And I went and talked to somebody who was at their booth, Makeup Effects Lab. They had a booth. And I talked to somebody, and I was like, do you guys still do the intern program? And the girl there, she was like, oh yeah, they still do it. And she gave me Paul Elliott's number. She's like, call Paul and just, let him know you want to maybe come in as intern or whatever. So I call, and he's like, yeah, sure, come in. And then I go over there, I bring my little book, and my portfolio was like, I had like they weren't mortar sculptures, but they were resin castings of my mortar sculptures. I had like a Yoda, which was pretty good. And I had Darth Vader with like the star and the helmet and stuff like that. And then as far as makeups go, I had like, oh, here's my zombie that I did in the haunted house, in my living room kind of picture. I don't even think I had a smartphone yet when I went there yet. I don't remember, but it was very like, and he looked at my portfolio and was like, oh, well, I can see you're really talented, but we're kind of full right now. So, give us a call in like 2 weeks and we'll see if we have room for you. So I was like, okay. So, and I don't know if he was sincere, if he just wanted to get rid of me and, this guy will never come back or whatever. So I waited 2 weeks and I called, and he was like, yeah, come on in. And so I came in, and in 2 weeks, and then, but this was kind of like a really weird time to be an intern, or I think maybe work in the effects industry. I think this was probably maybe 2013, 2014, something like that. I mean, there was nothing going on. It was like, when I got there, there was maybe like 5 other interns. And I actually, two of the people that I started with, one of them actually works for Distortions now, Tommy Cassidy. And I remember when we started, and he was sculpting masks. He did this giant sculpture, this kind of bee mask. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so awesome. I'm here sculpting this little gnome thing. And I was like, I really got to like step it up. I can't just be like sculpting little gnomes that are this big. I need to really do something more, out there. So, and but again, there was nothing going on. It was like no jobs coming in. So we had all these interns just sitting around, and you're just kind of doing your own thing, hoping that something comes in that you can work on. And there was a couple little things that, we got to do, like sandblast helmets and do a body cast. They made like an Ant-Man suit for like Comic-Con, something like that. So we got to help with that. But again, there wasn't a lot to do. So, we were really working on our own stuff. And I started doing, I was like, well, I'm going to do a maquette. So I made a maquette of Chewbacca fighting 2 stormtroopers. And that took me like 6 months to like finish. And then finally brought it in. And everyone's like, oh, wow, it looks great, whatever. And then, so I'm doing that, but at the same time, being there was really good because it was Kevin Haney. He was there. He wasn't there a lot, but Kevin Haney, if you don't know who he is, he worked on Driving Miss Daisy. He won an Oscar for Driving Miss Daisy. He worked on Addams Family. He was worked under Dick Smith on a lot of stuff too. And I think he just retired recently, but he was still working on Disney shows and Nickelodeon shows and whatever through this whole time. So he wasn't there that often, but every once in a while you get to work on little things for him and help him, which was very nerve-wracking. But he was nice to me. He bought me peanut M&Ms once. So he always seemed like he wanted to just yell at you, but he was cool. So and also Brad Look was there. Brad did a lot of the Star Trek, like all through the 90s. He did all the Star Trek stuff, and he'd worked on like Hunger Games and that kind of stuff. And he was always good for, just little nuggets of, kind of stuff like, don't put your brush in your mouth while you're doing makeups and stuff like just, really, he was really, he was not a rule bender. He was very, when you're doing makeups, this is the professional way to do makeups. And, he was completely sincere and he was very good at his job. So every little nugget that I could get from him, I kind of put that in my file cabinet too. So, it wasn't full on makeup tutorials or anything like that, but there was definitely some learning going on, even though there wasn't a lot of work going on. And I got to help with a couple live casts. The first one was with Kevin Haney, and I don't remember what the actor was for anything or what it was for, but we did a live cast. And then Alan Apone, which is one of the owners for Makeup Effects Labs, I got to do my second live cast with him on somebody. So, and he wasn't around much either because he was off working on Marvel movies or something at the time. But there was other people there that had worked on stuff for years. So it was, it was definitely a good experience. But so after a while, I kind of got like antsy though. This was like, well, I really like being here. And I really felt I fit in because, everybody was just like me pretty much. They were just kind of like nerdy sculptors and makeup people, whatever. And at the same time, I was doing the haunted house, every Halloween. And then I got into like doing the pumpkin carving too. Around the same time, I remember going to Descanso Gardens, which is close to me, and I saw there was guys and they were sculpting pumpkins, like 3D pumpkins. And I was like, oh, that's cool, And I don't remember if I've seen Ray Villafaine's. He had a book, or there was some kind of book out. Excuse me, that I remember seeing at Barnes and Noble before. They had all these weird pumpkins carved like that, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then when we went to Descanso Gardens, maybe a year or two later, I remember, they had actually people there sculpting the pumpkins. And I was like, wow, that's cool. So I was like, well, I have some sculpting tools at home. I'm going to go home and try that. And I went home and broke a bunch of my tools trying to figure out how to do it. And I did not do it. I was like, okay, well, I'll put that away until next Halloween, and then I'll try it again. But then I saw that they were doing, there was a company called, I think it was Rise of the Jack-o'-lanterns. And they had a website. So I went to their website and I sent them pictures of my sculptures. And I was like, are you guys hiring? Can I get in? Because I thought they would be doing like 3D pumpkins, because they were like, we'll show you how to do it. We'll train you and all this stuff. And I was like, well, cool. Here's my sculptures. Because I think I had done at least one or two masks at that point. So I had like real 3D sculptures that I could share with people at least. And they were like, sure, come on in on this day. And then, but it ended up being etched pumpkins, where you kind of take an image and you either draw it on or you transfer it on, and then you ink it, kind of like, comic book pre-color. You kind of ink it all the black, and then you kind of carve out the highlights. So, and then they would gut it, put a gigantic light in it, and you get this really great contrast of light and dark in the pumpkin. And so I did that, and that was very nerve-wracking the first time, because I was like, they didn't show me how to do it like they said they were going to do. Because I didn't know that you could just kind of put charcoal on the back of the image, stick it on the pumpkin, and then draw with a pen, and it would kind of transfer it. No one showed me such an easy thing to do. I was like freehanding everything. And at this time, I had not been drawing as much. I think I've, over the past few years, I've been drawing a lot more. At this time, I was not really drawing that much. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this Charlie Brown party scene. And there was like, all these characters and streamers and balloons and pumpkins. And it took me, I swear, it took me like 5 or 6 hours just to draw this thing on this pumpkin. And it's hard to draw on a pumpkin, just freehand on a pumpkin. So, and then I did get through it. And then finally, eventually, I just, from watching other people, I was like, why are they so fast? How can they do this so fast? And I'm watching them and I'm like, oh, they're just, they're transferring the image and then, they're going over it, which still, they say, anybody can do it, but I think it still takes a amount of skill to take, a goofy kind of messed up image that's on like a weird shaped object and kind of ink it in and make it look, presentable. So eventually I figured out how to transfer it, and I got through the first year, and I was like, well, that was fun, but I don't know if I'll ever do it again. It was kind of So then I continued on. I was still working at not working. I was interning at Makeup Effects Labs, and then during that time, I was like, well, there's not a lot going on. Maybe I think I told them I'm just going to take a break for a while, and kind of do my own thing, because also my kids were going into like they had an after school kind of thing they would go to that would watch them. So I could be at I could be Makeup Effects Lab all day long. But then that thing that we couldn't get in, or 1 year we couldn't get in, put them in that program or something. So I had to leave at like 2:00 in the afternoon to pick them up. So, and the internship hours were like 8 to 4, 9 to 4, or something like that. So I told them, like, eventually, I did come in, I would still leave early, but then after a while, I was like, you know what, I'm only here for a certain amount of hours. I feel like I'm not really, not really doing anything, that's pushing me forward. So I told them I was going to take a break. And during that break, I was still sculpting masks during that time. And I also took a class. I took a couple classes with Jordy Shell. I did his silicone bust class, and I didn't want to make a silicone bust, but I just wanted to get in there and watch him like sculpt and just kind of learn, see how they do the procedure and everything. And I also took a class with Simon Lee, and that was really good. The Simon Lee class, it was like a maquettes, I think beginning design for maquettes or whatever. But he was really good because he would just kind of talk for the first couple hours. He would just talk to the class, and just kind of go over like his experiences and things like that. So that was cool. And there was a lot of people in that class that were like worked at Mattel and were like digital sculptors. And I kind of was watching them, and they were kind of seemed like they were having they were kind of having issues with like the clay. They didn't really, it was kind of harder for them to go from digital to clay. But for me, the clay, even though it was still pretty new to me, because especially we were sculpting in Chavant, it wasn't water clay. So it's a little bit different, but I was, I felt more comfortable than I think a lot of the other people did. So I was like, okay, well, this is fun. And also it was kind of hard for me to be in a class sculpting with other people around watching what I'm doing. I never felt, it was kind of weird. I didn't feel that way when I was at the shop, because we were all just kind of making stuff, and I kind of knew what everybody's story was, where their levels of experience and everything was. But I would get kind of nervous, around, people I didn't know sculpting, I don't know, maybe some judgment thing. I'm worried, they're going to think, what's this guy doing or something like that. I don't know. But but that was a good experience to do that class. And I just, so from that, and then I did, like I said before, it was after that class actually that I started Chewbacca bust. I did Chewbacca maquette. And then after I did the Chewbacca maquette, I was like, I don't want to do anything small ever again. I'm tired of doing like little small things. So I was like, I'm going to, because when I first got to Makeup Effects Lab, there was a couple people that were making masks. And I was like, oh, masks. That's cool. Because I had actually, when I was a little kid, I think one of the first things I ever collected was the kind of Ben Cooper, the plastic masks. And I had a small collection of those, but I think once they got all cracked and everything, I just kind of gave up on trying to collect them.
Are those just the front of the face masks? Like
Yeah.
the ones you get in the box, the Halloween box with the acetate opening?
Yeah, the vacuum masks.
Yeah.
So, so I was like, well, mask, that's cool. I'd like to make a mask. So once I did the Chewbacca maquette, I was like, hey, I'm going to do some masks. I want to do something big. I want to sculpt something big, So, excuse me. So I started to do the masks. I did, I think the first mask I did was, it was going to be a zombie with like, his hair was going to be like, kind of a comb over, but it was going to be his whole scalp, not just his hair. And I kind of, sculpted out like just the forms and the face and the head. And then when I was laying paper towels on it to kind of put it away one day, he was, oh, he looks kind of like an Egyptian, like a pharaoh or something now. I was like, maybe I'll turn it into like a mummy mask. So I did that. And then he became like a zombie mummy guy. And then after that, then I did the Walrus Man mask. And then, actually, I might have done, I also did a Bystol, the Halloween decoration company. They had there was like a skull decoration that they have. And I made a mask of that actually, because that was one of my favorite decorations from my childhood. My aunts used to throw Halloween parties for us as kids. And I remember she had all those decorations. That was always my favorite image. So I was like, well, I'll make a mask of that. So, and then from there, then I did the Walrus Man. And then the Walrus Man mask, I got the commission for the blue snaggletooth. And then I did the hammerhead and the Greedo. And then I went into the Remco stuff. So
you worked the permission for the licensed work. Who did you go to for that, or who did you partner with?
For the Remco monsters, it was through NECA Collectibles.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first did them, I wasn't getting licensed or anything. I was just doing small. I had no intention of mass producing anything, so I wasn't really worried about that. But NECA Collectibles, Randy Falk from NECA, he said, we're going to do Universal license for some stuff, and we want to do, let's do a run of the Remco Mini Monster masks. And I was like, okay, cool. But then it turned out they couldn't sell them at retail because of other companies that had licenses for masks and things like that. So they sold them through Loot Crate, which is kind of a subscription. They have you can get a Harry Potter subscription, and every month they send you a box of Harry Potter swag, and stuff like that. So they did a deal through Loot Crate where if you buy 4 masks, you get 2 free. So, and they, started promoting that. And this was this was in 2020. I think maybe in May, something like that, they announced that this was gonna be available. And I was already behind the scenes. I was already making the next masks, and then the pandemic hit and everything. In March, I think, was when they had the lockdown. So, but also I had in the meantime, while still sculpting masks, I was always going to conventions, trying to find, maybe a gig in another shop, things like that. And then Mel Makeup Effects Labs, they have Mel products, which is like bald caps, prosthetics. They sell, Mel gel and Pax paint, that kind of thing. They have a whole company, on the side. And the person that they had doing bald caps, Josh Sachs, he was leaving or taking a kind of leave. He was going to go do silicone with Joel Harlow on the Black Panther movie. And it was going to be, he had to go to Atlanta, I think. And he was going to be gone for like a year or something like that, for 6 months. And so I think he just put it up on his Facebook or whatever. And he said, I'm looking for somebody, to make bald caps. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I can do that, I guess. And so I contacted him, and he remembered me from being an intern. And so he was like, okay, great, come in. So I came in, and then I got like 1 hour of training how to make bald caps. And but it was kind of funny because the person before him, it was kind of the same thing, because the person before him, Ben, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but he left to go do Face Off, I think. So it was kind of like a revolving door of people like, getting a gig and then going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of funny. But so I came in, and then I did my little training, and then I just started making, bald caps. And that was a lot of work to make bald caps, spraying bald caps. And but it was fun, and also kind of got me in the groove of working again like a normal, a routine, I guess you could say. So, and then so I was doing the ball caps, and Josh eventually came back, but they said, well, you can stay if you want, because we're busy enough that there's work, so if you want to stay on. So I said, okay, great, I'll stay on. And my wife was very happy because then I had money coming in. Because every time I would go to a convention or something, I met this person. He may have he may know somebody that's hiring or somebody, so, and it would never pan out ever. So, and I think she was never like, oh, you have to go, go get a job at UPS or anything like that. She wasn't like on me like that, but she was just like, yeah, whatever. Like eventually I think she got tired of hearing my almost, I'm almost going to get in here. So she was happy that I finally had something where there was some income, because I think at the same time I was still had money from my dad's still coming in, but it was coming into the tail end of his Social Security, money running out. So, I needed to have a job. So I was doing the ball caps, and then I got the deal through NECA to do the masks, the Universal monster masks. So, and for the, a couple of years leading up to that, I'd been doing the bald caps, making masks on my own, doing a haunted house, and doing the pumpkin carving. So every October, I was just like, oh no, it's October. Where I used to be like, oh, well, it's going to be October soon. But now I was like, oh, God, it's October. Because I would be doing like, building stuff for the haunted house. And I'd started they had like a main actor that they had. And I would do his makeup and kind of just little extra people too. But his makeup was always something elaborate. He would always come up with some crazy, I want to be this wizard guy or whatever, so there was always some really elaborate thing I'd have to build. And one year he was a wooden cigar store Indian, so I had to make an entire cigar store Indian suit. And so it was pretty involved for just kind of a local haunted house, but it was it was a pretty big haunted house, and they put like a whole 2 months into building it. And then so when the NECA deal happened to make the Universal Monster masks, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to quit doing the bald caps. Because again, thankfully, my wife was like, it's probably not the healthiest gig to have. Because basically you're just spraying chemicals, even though you're wearing a respirator and, suit and everything. It's not you come home and you're shoes are just covered in gunk, and
It's
it's not
almost
that
like being an automotive guy,
exactly.
because of the chemicals
Yeah,
and stuff. And it's like, automotive's awesome, but for me growing up, I didn't know a whole lot of those guys who lived that long.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I think I did that like 3 years, something like that. And I thought that was a pretty good run for a ball cap sprayer. So, so when the NECA thing happened, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I put in my notice, and I said, well, January 2020, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna, I got this deal to do the mask through NECA, and I'm not gonna have time to do, work here, do the masks, and take care of my kids and sleep and eat and all that stuff. So because I was always going for make the ball caps. I would go because I still had to go pick up my kids, drop off my kids at school. So I would go during the day. If I didn't finish work, I would go back at night. I would go on the weekends, just kind of whenever I had to go and finish work, because sometimes you get an order for like 200 ball caps. And, I think it took like a couple hours to make like 8 of them. So, it was a pretty involved and busy thing through most of it. So
And was that like were you paid per per ball cap?
it was paid per cap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you had to make a lot to,
Sure.
It's kind of reminded me of like my dad. He was a welder. And I remember one time I had a little transformer, toy. And I think it cost, I don't know what it cost back in the 80s, whatever. He was like, how many welding rods I had to melt to make that? And so I would tell my kids, how many ball caps I had to spray,
Yeah.
make this, to make this Hello Kitty thing or whatever I've just bought you. So
You gotta understand what it costs to trade value for value, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So then so January 2020, that was it. I left Mel Products, and then I was just making masks. And then 2 months later, the pandemic lockdown happened, and I was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Is all this stuff just going to dry up? What's going to happen? But, and NECA was kind of like, it was nothing had changed for them. They were like, we're still continuing on. We're doing this. And I think I didn't really know if the deal was ever going to happen, even though they kept saying, yeah, it's going to happen. In my life, being a musician and trying to do other art gigs, it was always like, it seemed like I would get so close to getting somewhere, and then it would just kind of be, disappointment, or never would kind of get over that hump, So I didn't really even think that it was going to go through in the first place, but once they finally said, yes, we're doing this, for sure, papers are signed, they sent me, tax forms and stuff to sign, and that was it. The deal was on. So I quit.
How was that for you when the deal was on? Like, how was it working through the contract? And were you just kind of going with what they offered you, or did you have some negotiating back and forth?
Well, I kind of, I didn't know what to charge, because I was like, well, I already had 2 masks sculpted, and they were like, well, you already have 2 of them made. They weren't going to like not give me money for those for the time,
Right?
But like they were just kind of looking at it like as a timeline standpoint. We already got 2 done, so then I got to do 4 more to finish the set. So, and I had no idea what to charge. I kind of had an idea how long it took me to sculpt one, and like make a mold and do the master mold and all that, master copy and all that. So I luckily, there's a couple of folks who worked at Downpost Studios that live in my same town, Rob and Kathy Tharp. They live in La Crescenta, where I live. And I didn't know them really well, but they had helped me out with some glow pigment when I did like a Halloween 3 tribute mask. And I had contacted them and asked them if they wanted to to paint them or kind of do a collaboration for Mask Fest. I think this was 2019. And they're like, no, we don't really, do other, work with other people that way, whatever. We just kind of keep to ourselves. But, if you want to come, we have some glow pigment. If you want to, we'll give you some that we have and we'll show you how we do it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's great.
That's cool.
And so I got to meet them. They're super nice, super great people. And so when I kind of got the NECA thing happen, I was like, well, they're like, how much do you want? So I contacted Rob and Kathy Tharp and I said, well, I got this gig and I don't know what to charge. What do you think is like a good price? They're a good thing to tell them, and they're like, well, I think she said that they made like $33 an hour when they worked at Don Post or something like that. And that was like, Don Post closed in 2012. So it was a while back. So I was like, well, okay. So I went back to NECA and I said, well, how about if we do like $30 an hour, and they were like, okay. So, and then I think all the masks took me about the same amount of time. So, it was not like, bucket loads of money, but it was as far as what I'd done in the past, which was like sculpt the mask, mold it, and then sell copies of it and have to make every copy and probably make, $1,000 or a couple $1,000 in that process. This way I didn't have to make any of the masks. I just did the sculpting, the molding. I made the paint masters and the master mold or master copy that they would make their molds off of. So it was like a lot less work for me for about the same amount of money I would have made if I had just done all of them myself. And plus they have the exposure. If I would have said no to the deal, no, I just want to do it my own, keep all the money and all this stuff, maybe I'd probably still be trying to sculpt the whole set. Maybe I wouldn't be pushed to even finish, the whole set in 1 year. So that was a nice, it kind of got me going to really get the set done, because they were going to put them out. They had to be done. And they were real cool about it. They weren't like, we need it by this day. They knew it would take me, so long to do each one. So they were really cool. And then when the pandemic happened, they kind of delayed everything anyway. So, eventually they did come out, they did the subscription service. I don't know how many they sold, but it is cool when you see like people's mask collections and you'll see one in there, or people share, they have the whole set in their movie room or whatever. And it's like, wow, that's really cool. So, it was very good, cool, very rewarding. And it was definitely, a next step up from just, I didn't feel so much like just the guy in his garage anymore. It kind of validated, because when you're kind of you're in the storm and you're just, making stuff, you don't really think, oh, this is so great, I'm doing such great things here. You're just kind of working and trying to just do the best you can. So for somebody who would take, stuff you made and want to put it out like that, that was kind of gave you a real boost of confidence and said, okay, well, maybe I am onto something here, so let me just keep going and see what else I can do. If I can take it, keep going with this and continue on making masks that people seem to really want. So, and that's where I'm
so
at.
how did Etsy start for you, and how's it going?
Etsy's going okay. I had started the Etsy store a while back. I had begun it and then I never finished it. But then every summer we go to this lake for vacation, and I don't really like the water and I don't like being outside. So I spent like one whole week just building my Etsy store, sitting on the beach or sitting on the shore or whatever. And I just did all my Etsy stuff. I built the store. I was like, I'm going to finally finish, this Etsy. And I think that was right around the time I had done the blue snaggletooth mask. I hadn't even finished all the Star Wars masks yet. So I was like, I'm going to, get this Etsy store going. Because before that, I was kind of selling through Instagram and stuff like that, Facebook sometimes, eBay every once in a while. But, I didn't realize at the time how much easier the Etsy store would make it, because when you get a bunch of orders in, because before I would have to like contact the person back and forth, oh, what's your zip code, and they figure out your shipping and do all that stuff. It was a lot of back and forth. So you're spending a lot of time, talking back and forth, just figuring out prices for people and stuff like that. So the Etsy store is nice because it's like everything is there and they could just, buy it, they pay for it. I have their address, know where it's going. And if the shipping is wrong or whatever, if I don't charge them enough or whatever, that's on me, So it definitely took, a lot of the back and forth out. It made it way easier to make more sales. And plus, they have their little promotion that they do on offsite sales and whatever they're doing on their side. So, it's just an easy place where people can go and see all of my items too. So it's definitely.
And you kind of keep it in tandem, right? Like it seems to me that your Instagram account and then Etsy are the way that you roll.
Yeah. I have a Facebook account too, but I don't know, it's weird. On Facebook, I get like 4 likes, and then like on Instagram, I'll get like 100 something likes. I don't know. I don't know if it's because Facebook, it's like an artist account I have, so it just kind of gets hidden or lost or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, Instagram is my main thing, and I have a link to my Etsy store through Instagram. So that's my primary thing that works the best for me to like put my stuff out there.
You've got a fun Instagram account too, but I am a Star Wars geek and toy geek, so that's just a fun place to go to see your stuff and what you do.
Thanks.
So, what's next for you? Like, what are your plans for masks? It seems like that's kind of where you're settling in for now.
Yeah, masks are kind of my bread and butter, I guess. Well, I did, let's see, last year I did a Skeletor mask, the Mattel Skeletor mask, and that went really well. And right now I'm doing another set of masks for NECA, which I haven't revealed yet what it is, but I'm doing another set of masks that's going to come out through NECA. And so that's what I'm working on now is, beyond that, I have a long list of things I want to do. Hopefully I'll live long enough to get through half of it. So, there's so many toy things I want to do, like $6 Million Man or, Shogun Godzilla. There's so many things that I want to turn into masks. It's just like endless, so.
But the $6 Million Man will only have one eye hole to look through. And it'll be in the back of his head. Do you remember that? That was awesome. You and I think we're about the same age, right? Were you born in 71-ish?
I was born in 71. I just turned 51.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you and I are right there. I'll be 51 in a couple months. So that's cool. That's cool. Star Wars obviously had a big impact on your life.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Star Wars. I don't even know how I found out about it, but I remember I had my schoolmate at school. He brought the Walrus Man figure to school, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's from Star Wars." And I was like, "Wow, it's so cool." He's like, "Take it home and play with it." So I took it home, and then my grandma's dog ate the figure.
No!
It was just like a little stub with some legs, and then I was like, "Oh." I took it back to school. He was like, "I don't care." But
wow, what a good friend!
Yeah. So
Pondo Baba took a dive. Man.
So yeah, that and I think E.T. when E.T. came out, I remember that I was really into E.T. I was always drawing E.T. I was like, I want to be a director, Steven Spielberg. I want to be a director. I had no idea what being a director meant, but I was always drawing E.T. I had the little E.T. figures and everything. So yeah, those two things probably really catapulted me into that kind of fandom, I think.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier off the air, if we had been neighbors, we would have been best friends, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally.
So, Mark, if somebody is looking to do something similar to you, or they want to make a living as an artist, like what would your best advice be to them?
I would just say to do it. Really try to figure out how to do it first, or always keep learning how to do it. I'm still, even though I've been doing this for a while, I'm still learning stuff and picking up stuff. Don't ever disregard information, no matter where it comes from. Always try to, you never know what's going to work for you. So it's always good to pick and choose, pick things that you can incorporate into your workflow and your style of doing things, and just kind of figure out what works for you. I try to listen to every YouTube video, every kind of old, for me, mask making. There's a few old kind of old school videos that people have done. I watch all those. There's Stan Winston's school has hundreds of videos you can watch. If you live in Southern California, you can take a class. There's like a lot of not just Jordu and Simon Lee and those people. There's other people that have classes and things like that. So I would say, take a chance and really try to educate yourself, because you don't have to, I don't think you have to go to like a makeup school or an art school necessarily, unless you want to really learn something specific from those avenues. I think if you want to do it on your own, on your own terms, you can really do it, as long as you really apply yourself and just work hard, try to be consistent, be nice. I think being nice and just drama free just kind of helps you have an easy life and easy time with things. Just when you make something for somebody and they're not happy with it, either replace it or give them a refund. You don't have to do like 8 hours of back and forth on Facebook drama, whatever. You just take care of it. Just handle your stuff. That's my advice. Oh, and if you can have, I think it's kind of easy for me to say, because I have a really stable partnership with my wife. She really supports me too. So if you have a partner that can kind of support you too, that totally helps. That's my advice, basically.
That's awesome. I love the drama free part of it, because it just means so much to your clients or to anybody that you're doing work with, and it means a lot in your relationships too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, awesome. So where can people find you, Mark?
My main place where I post is on Instagram at Mortar Heads. There's a link to my Etsy store on my Mortar Heads account, Instagram. I'm on Facebook. There's Mark Enright, the art, or Mortar Heads, the art of Mark Enright. I have that. I have a Squarespace page, which is, I guess, another advice I could give. They always say, don't just focus on Instagram and Facebook. Have something separate, in case those platforms decide tomorrow that, oh, we're closing Instagram. Where do you go with your business?
Right.
Have your own website. So I have a Squarespace site, which is, it's not really set up for sales or anything yet, but it has a lot of sculptures, a lot of masks, other work that I've done. So I think that's a good thing to do, to have that as well.
And what was that website called?
It's just Squarespace, Mortar Heads. I think if you just type in Squarespace Mortar Heads, it'll come up.
Okay. I'll have the link down below too.
Okay.
In the notes. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Man, I just love Mark's story. I love how tenacious he is, and how he kept getting after it and going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and making it work. And he had some cool opportunities in his life to learn from some cool people, and he took advantage of classes, courses that were offered to fill in the gaps as he was building his career. And I also like that he made his family life and his art business life work for him. He and his wife have both worked pretty hard at that, and then I just love that he took chances, trying and trying and trying again with that next possible deal and that next possible deal, until the whole mask thing ended up being something that came together for him with some relationships and some licensing in the industry. Mark is just a really, really cool guy. And thanks, Mark, for sharing your story. I encourage you to follow Mark on social media. I also encourage you to purchase some of his cool stuff and own a little bit of Mark for yourself. Really, really cool. So that's all we have today for this episode of The Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and I hope that you are encouraged and want to go and take those next steps just because of what you've heard Mark speak about today. Go do that next thing, learn that next thing, pick up the phone and call that next person, work on that next project. It's going to get you closer to where you want to be. All right? All right. All you breakthrough creatives, I will see you next time. Cheers.